This is a Geek Leader podcast, and I'm your host, John Rauda. This show is all about helping us grow as leaders, become better technologists, and improve our lives both at work and at home. I hope you enjoy the show and learn a lot. Hello, world, and welcome to a Geek Leader podcast. I'm your host, John Rauda. Today's sponsor is A2 Hosting. I've been using A2 Hosting solid state hosting solutions for our website at geekleader.com for many years now, and absolutely love their support, their service, and all the features that you get. You get access to cPanel. You get all of the things that you can imagine for a great WordPress experience, including their A2 optimized WordPress, which does extra security checks, extra lockdown. You can lock down your editor file so you can't edit anything inside there. You get alerts whenever there are file changes that are done. You can also do automatic updates, backups, and more with A2 Hosting. So highly recommend it. Go to geekleader.com/A2 to get more information and to sign up for their solid state turbocharged speed hosting today. Again, that's at geekleader.com/A2. All right, Geek Leaders, today on the show, I am honored to have Nicole Stanton on the call. She is the Director of Design at Uplevel, and we're going to be talking about some of the things that she's done with her team that are kind of unique and kind of interesting, and some of the cutting-edge things, such as the 4-day work week, which is very exciting to me, and I'm very interested in that because we're getting ready to implement something similar at my company, so it's personal to me today. Anyway, with all that being said, Nicole, welcome to the show.
Hi, nice to be here.
If you don't mind, just tell the audience a little bit about kind of how you got to where you are in your career and what is it that you're doing at Uplevel.
Yeah, I have a bachelor's in graphic design and started out as a designer for mostly websites and things, transferred over to doing a lot of advertising. In that advertising design work and creative direction, we did a lot of just kind of mini products within the advertising space, which was pretty fun, and kind of found a love for product. And through just a series of events, decided to interview with this tiny little startup called Uplevel that was starting up, and here I am.
Awesome. And what is it that Uplevel does exactly?
Yeah, what we do is we take data insights from developers, so using their Jira, Calendar, Slack, and Git data, and we process that into insights to hopefully help their teams to function better and give them data to support changing the way they work, running efficient teams, things like that.
Awesome. Yeah, that sounds like something very useful. I know we try to do pieces of that manually with Jira and looking at like tickets and things like that come through now, and looking at GitHub as well. So I think that's pretty cool that you guys are building a tool to kind of automate some of that.
Yeah, and it's a really special group too. I think that there's this really cool aspect of having kind of a moral code or lens. All of our engineers and developers really care about this product and want it to work for other engineers and developers. And so there's always this wanting to evaluate if we are using the data correctly. Are we using it to pit developers up against each other or to compare teams against each other? Like, we always want it to be something where the developer is looking at this and how they can improve and how management can improve, and not like pitting people against each other or using it for good instead of evil.
Yeah, and that happens with analytics. Sometimes you'll see people try to use the analytics in certain ways that aren't necessarily the best way. But I think it's great if you can have full transparency and allow, letting your engineers and developers use it as much as the management side as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So one thing that really caught my interest and why I really wanted to talk to you was about this 4-day work week that you've implemented. And I want to know more about like where that came from, what was the idea behind it, and what that has done for your team.
Yeah, I think that management and leadership on Uplevel had been kind of paying attention to some things that had come out around a 4-day work week with some other experiments in some other countries, and kind of wanted to look at it for us and how that might work. And ultimately, the conversation started happening like, hey, we're looking at this, we're wondering if this would work, let's have some discussions about it. They pulled the trigger. They kind of started that like 3 months or so out before finally implementing it for this new year. And from there, we kind of did some discussions. We did our department teams kind of separate and do some hackathon thinking around how this would work. What are the metrics we want to use to decide if this has been successful? Kind of, I guess, sorry, let me step back a minute. Definitely used it as an experiment for about 3 months to see if it was working.
Okay. And, how did employees take it? Like, I imagine there was some excitement. And what was the logistics of how you worked it? Was it like going to, because I hear companies say, oh, we're going to do a 4-day work week, we're going to 4 10s, instead of 8-hour days or something like that? Or is it just like, no, you do your work when you do your work? Or how was the logistics behind something like this?
Yeah, we did not want to do 4 10s. We wanted to stick to 4 8s because we truly felt that if we were being effective in those 4 8-hour days, that we could get just as much work done. And I think that the main thing that got in the way often was indecision around if we're going with a design, decisions we're making on features, things like that. And we would churn a lot on that. And we would have just lots of reoccurring meetings all over the place. And so our team took a step back and was like, okay, if we're reducing a day, let's wipe all of the meetings off the calendar. We're going to start this experiment with all those meetings off. And then we're going to really evaluate, hey, like we need our process to reflect quicker decision making. And that's how we started it off. And I think that the removing of the meetings helped a lot. We also, our team specifically, we have a couple of people, we're based in Seattle. We have a couple of people on the East Coast as well as in the Midwest. And so trying to find timing and stuff for meetings, I think was a little challenging at first. But the clearing of that to begin with was really helpful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So when it comes to the productivity of your team, I know I've tried experiments in the past where, we did like, half a day on Friday. We've done experiments where, on Fridays you do nothing but work on whatever project you want to work on that's not part of our current sprint or things that we're involved in. We've done things like that in the past. We haven't been able to like fully execute this 4-day work week like you have, partly because of getting buy-in from the rest of the business and upper management. People just feel like it's a bit too much. But what is the results of something like this? Like how, the employees, what was their satisfaction level coming into this? Was there some fear? Was there excitement? And how did that all play out?
Yeah, I think on the developer side, everybody was pretty stoked about this.
I bet.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the experiment itself, I think there was definitely like, let's try this, let's come into this with an open mind, because if it doesn't work, let's just go back to 5 and say we tried. So throughout the experiment, we would do surveys and temperature checks. Just, we do like 1 week, they were these small pulse surveys during the week. And then we do like a monthly long one where we're talking about like, are you feeling effective? Are you feeling more relaxed? Are you feeling like, how's your burnout levels? We would take all of that into account before we actually decided to really go into just implementing it for just in general throughout the company. And most people on the team overwhelmingly loved that time because they were able to, we have a lot of hikers on the team and they were able to spend their Fridays outside, which was really great. There was a couple of other people that used it, like if they did have to work on a Friday because they were overloaded, they used that as like deep work time where they weren't getting interrupted and they could really focus for a couple of hours and then take the rest of the day off, but ultimately still striving to try and fit all of that into that 4-day work week. Me personally, I have 2 kids and 2 dogs and everything else. So like my weekends can sometimes be way more intense than my weekdays. So having a day where my kids are in school and I can actually decompress, like just helped me to be a better parent as well as a better mom. It was pretty great.
Does it help with like the separation between work and home? Yeah, because sometimes like for me, things just bleed in together, to where like I'm at home, I'm with the kids, we're playing a game or whatever, my phone's buzzing and I feel like I have to look at it and I have to keep it up. But imagine that extra day, because usually by like middle of the day, Saturday, I'm kind of done. I'm not looking at work at all. I'm on home time. And I imagine having an extra day kind of transitions you a little bit more, give you that more of that break.
Yeah, absolutely. Everything just seemed more compartmentalized. Like, this is my time to work. I'm going to sit here and I'm going to make sure that we work hard. And I think everyone did that. And we saw an increase in productivity on our product team as opposed to a decrease, which I thought was great. We would have a really hard time with making decisions. And as soon as we switched, those decisions were getting made more often and we moved much faster and were way more productive in a shorter amount of time. And then had just shut off for those 3 days for the most part.
Yeah, I know. This has probably been 10 years ago now when I had, it was right around 10 years ago when I was, we had kids and my kids were getting a little bit older, it was time to, they weren't sleeping all the time. So they were staying up a little bit, going to bed about 8 o'clock now. And before that I was working way too late, way long. And then I decided to, and this is back, way well before COVID when everybody was in the office all the time, everywhere pretty much. I made the decision that I was going to leave work at 5 o'clock, which was very unusual for me because I was one of those people that stayed there later than I should have. And I was going to leave at 5 and I was not going to check my phone. I was not going to do anything. Back then it was a BlackBerry, to date me a little bit, but I wasn't going to check my BlackBerry or email and anything until after the kids go to bed. And then at that time I would, if needed be, I would jump online and work whatever I needed to do. And I cleared up my boss and that's what I was going to do. And he's like, yeah, that's fine. No big deal. And then I realized that during the 8 to 5 window that I was giving myself to be at work, I was getting way more done. And I think it was because I had this psychological boundary of I couldn't let things bleed over. I had to be done by 5, and I feel like that's probably what's happening with your team. And the reason why you saw that increase of productivity is because you didn't have that, I don't know if it's freedom, if that's the right word, to let things just hang out there and bleed over. You focused on getting it done because you realized you had a shorter time period and you really wanted to make this work.
Yeah, we applied that to the meetings that we were having as well. It was like, well, okay, so we're in this meeting. Did we discuss everything we need to discuss? Okay, we're done. We're not going to take the extra half an hour or whatever it is. And then a lot of times it's like, why are we even having this meeting? And questioning, we really question what we're doing and why. And if we don't want to do a meeting, then let's put more time on the calendar to get some stuff done.
Yeah, I think that's great. And, I went during that same period, I was going through the same kind of phase where I was looking at all my meetings and kind of saying, do I need to be here? What value am I bringing to this meeting? If I'm not bringing any value to this meeting, can I not just skip it? Can you just send me the minutes and I'll read them at my leisure, instead of being there and wasting my time and potentially your time too, if we don't need this meeting. So I think it's really good that you guys did that as an organization and kind of brought that together. When you say increase in productivity, was that kind of across the board, or was there times where it was up and times where it was down? Did it increase for the first 2 weeks and then kind of tank, or how did that sustain?
I think the product team was productivity increased for the product team and it kind of stayed there. We've had a couple of weeks where we've been, really trying to work on strategy and where we're going with features and things like that. But as far as the designing features and delivering them to development and engineering to complete and get them built, everything has been running just much smoother across the board.
That's awesome. And when you talk to, let's say, clients, because I imagine clients may say, or even vendors, they'll say, oh, can we meet on Friday? And you don't have Friday anymore because you're doing a 4-day work week. How does that go off? How do clients perceive that?
For the most part, there are some people on the team that will have Friday meetings when it doesn't work to not have those. But they usually try to keep those to just those meetings on Fridays when they have to. And we also have to have some people who are on call in case there's outages or things like that as well. But that happens on the weekends as well.
Yeah, of course. I imagine that's all the time. When it comes to the business side of things, you kind of have to keep things going 24/7. When it comes to people, having fun on Friday and getting out of the office, do you ever use that time for, let's say, team events or anything like that, or team building things? Say, hey, I know you guys are off on Friday, but should we get together and hang out and do this thing? Or is it just completely, no, we're not doing work stuff, here's family time?
Yeah, I wish that we were a little bit closer, because everything right now with our team distributed has to be on Zoom, and ultimately we're trying to step away from our computers on that day. However, there's definitely been a few weeks where, because of US holidays falling on a Monday, that we've discussed, instead of having to work on Friday, trying to keep a 4-day work week. And sometimes that means working on Fridays if there's a holiday on Monday, using that Friday to be more of a training time and experimenting with that instead of like a normal work day.
Oh yeah, that makes sense.
So we're going to,
that's a good idea.
Yeah. Just experimenting with some different ways to do that.
So is this like a long-term change that you guys are doing? Like, have you guys settled in? This is how we're doing it, because this is working. This is making our employees happier, and happy employees we know are more productive. Science shows that.
Yeah, I think that we are like fully bought into this, just the benefits we've seen. And there was a couple of things that we wanted to measure, as far as like, if we saw these signs, we might stop what we were doing. So mostly like, are we actually, is productivity increasing? And if that isn't, then we need to, talk about that. Morale is another one. If everyone is like super burned out in those 4 days because they feel like they can't get their jobs done in that amount of time, and they're, that's not worth it either. So there's still some things. And again, like customer facing teams, like, can they actually take some of that time off, or do they still have the same schedule? There was a few things that we just really needed to work through and see how that worked. But for the most part, our clients have been fairly respectful. Most people have been able to take, that time off very often, and it's been great.
Awesome. And when it comes to like recruiting and hiring new people, what is that like? I imagine that makes it so much easier if you're a remote company or you hire people remotely, and you only have to work 4 days a week. How many people think, is this a legit job?
Yeah, a little bit. I think that it's been one of the things for us is ultimately what we're trying to do with data is make companies put people first. And we are strong believers in drinking that Kool-Aid ourselves. And I think that this has been just one of those benefits that really shows that we strongly believe in putting people first. And this is a benefit of, we do our work in this amount of time, and people like relatively like in interviewing and hiring seem to be pretty stoked on the idea.
Oh yeah, I would imagine so. And I've read articles before that a lot of European countries have like a 34 and 32 hour work weeks that are kind of standard for their industries or their countries. Whereas, in America, we have our 40-hour work week is kind of our standard. And I found personally, like if I'm going to take, even last week, we had a holiday on Monday, and I decided to take Friday off to have the longer holiday. I still got my work done. It wasn't like I didn't do any work, and I came up, a fifth of my work short for the week. Somehow I squeezed it in. It's mentally, it's like, I know I'm going to take Friday off, so I'm going to do a little bit more each day and get it done. And, of course, the boss in me wants to say, well, why don't you just do a little bit more all 5 days? And then I realized, like, I need some recharge time. I need some, I'm like a battery. I'm going to be drained out by Friday if I do that every day. I don't have that extra day to recharge.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that there is, I think there's something to be said as a creative, myself and what I'm doing. And I believe that most of developers, have to be creative to do their jobs as well. I think that in order to operate at like your highest capacity, you do need that rest and that break. Like when you're facing burnout, you're not doing your best work. And this is just like another way to help amp that up, right? And to give you that rest and let your brain, focus on gardening or something away from your computer, so that when you come back, you can like stay focused and you can be sharp and you can be doing like your best work.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I actually gave a talk a while back about how developers are creative, and they are creative. So people say, like, because I've talked to some engineers, like, no, I'm not creative, I'm an engineer. Like, don't you solve problems? You create solutions to everyday problems. That's part of being creative. And you have to have that same kind of mentality to realize that you do creative work. You do need that recharge time. You do need that time to let your brain rest, because your brain is constantly active. And I know there's times, at work, everybody's job has like, peaks and valleys, and it goes through a flow period. And when you're in those times where it's super busy and super hectic and you're thinking a really lot, you get really tired, and and you need that extra time to recharge if you want to continue that level of output.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think being, a career woman, like doing things with a family and everything else, I have like some jokes with some friends that I respect a lot and look to for advice around how rested women do good work. Like we have to make sure to like give time for ourselves to decompress, to rest, to do all of those things so that we can be at the top of our game.
Yeah, definitely. And the same thing goes with men too. We need a rest.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we take too much rest, but that's okay. So what have been the negatives? There's never all positives. There's always got to be some kind of negative, some kind of thing that came out of here that's kind of like, it's not the best in the world, but there's, we can overcome it. What are some of the negative things that you may have seen?
With the 4-day work week specifically, I think that there are some weeks where it's really, really like where we need to get a meeting on the books to talk about something, and there is just like no time on people's calendars within the times that we have. That can be really, really frustrating and really hard. Or there's weeks where like, because we're meeting a lot, all of our time is in meetings and we're not getting that work time necessarily. So like, feeling like you need to use that Friday for deep work is something that we're really trying to avoid, but sometimes it has to happen. So I think that's the worst of it, is just like really staying on top of managing those meetings and managing when, and prioritizing and, still making time for one-on-ones and things like that. It's really important. But other times, it just feels like the week is just all talk and like no time to work. I'd say that those weeks are a little bit more difficult than some of the others.
Yeah, I can definitely imagine. And I can see that too. If you're trying to, eliminate some meetings on certain days and have to move them other days, it kind of fills up those days a little bit more. And, that's where you go back to that, what you said at the beginning. We need to examine our meetings and see if we really need to have them or not. And I think that's a practice that everybody needs to do it from time to time. And, I teach part-time at Winthrop University. And one of the things I have my students do is to do a time log. And so I have them do that like the second week of the semester, to just document in 15-minute increments what you do every hour of the day for an entire week. And I do the same for myself during that period of time. I kind of share it with the students what I did. And so it's, I'll make it fair. So I'm not just seeing what they're doing, but they also see what I do. And we talk about it and we say like, what surprised you? And, for me, it's always, I'm surprised on how much time I spent doing this thing that I shouldn't be doing, like maybe playing video games or watching too much TV. And if I noticed in my fall semester during football season, it's always watching too much TV because I'm watching too much football. Right. But it teaches you to like, I need to correct this behavior, and I can, get so much more time out. Cause I'll have some students that say, I just don't have time for this thing. I said, well, do your time log and see where you're at. And do the time log like, oh, well, I spent 11 hours last week playing video games. And I could cut that down to like 4 hours. And now I have 7 hours to do something different and learn some skill or work out or exercise or whatever it is that I need to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that there's something to at like during work and things where if you have too many projects also, you don't give yourself the amount of ramp up and cool down time from those projects. And so like it's almost like we have a data or insight in our product called context switching. And this is one of the ones that I love because it really shows like, hey, as a developer or an engineer, if you have 8 products or 8 epics on your plate, even though those all have story points that, equate to your work week, you're having to like come up onto a project, think through that, and then come down. And that also takes time. And then you're never really able to actually focus on something. And I think that like, not only in work, that also applies to life and things as well. If you're trying to do too much, then like, there's like just the switching also creates opportunities for there not to be, not to do your best work because there's not a lot of focus in what you're doing.
Yeah. And you call that context switching, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I haven't heard that term before, but I think that's absolutely right. I know we try to do, kind of the WIP limits where we're trying to limit the work in progress, but also like the type of work that you're doing and switching back and forth. You're absolutely right. I can, I see that just as a manager when I'm doing management type task versus strategy task, or, every now and then when I dabble in, get into the code and actually do coding task, it's a very, different type of skill set. So you have to switch your brain on and off. And there is that lag between being fully effective and having to figure out, okay, where am I? What am I doing now? And shift that way of thinking. So yeah, that's a really cool feature that you're talking about there.
Yeah, there was a point in time when the team was feeling somewhat burnt out, and we had been in the 4-day work week for about a month, I think. And we were kind of going through, we have a sprint retros page in the product that kind of gives insights on like the past 2 weeks of work for our sprints or 2 weeks. And we were going through that page and we were noticing that the context switching was high, and we're like, okay, so what's going on? And we started looking at those epics. And in planning, we made a very okay, there's like 8 epics across 4 engineers, and they're all saying it's all too much and they have too much to do. And I mean, they were raising their hands and saying, this isn't working for us. And so it really helped in with the product manager and I and the UX designer to really look at how do we limit and focus. Like, we can't get all of this in right now. They need to stay, like the people who are doing the work need to stay focused. So how do we decide on what we're going to work on? Here are the priorities. Okay, this can wait till later. And that was a switch also within the whole experiment that really helped us to be more productive, was just really evaluating what's on everyone's plates.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's really cool that it sounds like you guys are a Scrum shop. And do you guys talk about or when you implemented this, did you talk about this 4-day work week during your retros? Was that something that came up and you tried to figure out how is this affecting the sprints that you guys are in?
Yeah, we talked about it a bit. We switched how we were doing some things. In the retros are mostly engineering and dev led. And they were definitely talking about how the 4-day work week was going to work with them, how they, again, I think there was a point where we were trying to get too many things on their plates. And so there was that conversation of focus. And that came out of those retros for sure. And I think related to the 4-day work week too, because we were still, treating things like, we can just, get that extra day in there. And they're like, nope. And the funny thing is I think we actually ended up completing epics faster and doing more work by focusing versus having multiple things on their plate as well.
Oh yeah, I've seen that a lot. I've limited the number of epics that we can work on, on our teams, and I've done that since early in Scrum. My wife's she's the director of PMS, so she teaches me all these project management things that I don't quite fully understand, but I'll implement them and try them out, and it seems to be working really well. So yeah, that's definitely something that I think limiting the number of items is really good. And I haven't heard it called context switching before, but that's definitely the thing that seems to be helpful. What other things have you seen that have helped implement this and help make this a success at Uplevel?
I think, here, hold on just a moment. I'm going to make sure. I think that one of the things that really helped was involving the full team and the full company in doing this. We didn't do, okay, hey, product, you guys try this 4-day work week and let us know how that works. Or, it was like a full company switch on how we operate and when we're working. We also really evaluated how we would measure success together. Each department team kind of broke off and was like, what does success look like for our team in this experiment? And what, we also decided how we were going to change our procedures from there as well.
And was this publicly documented, or was it just kind of like an internal conversation, or how did that logistics of that play out?
Yeah, we documented everything. All of the surveys we have too also documented, we have just the data on morale and how people were feeling at the time, and if people were still feeling productive and how much work we got done. We documented everything and created an ebook for it that we have on our website as well, that has a lot of the things I've been talking about, just about how we would know when we would stop the experiment, things that we were thinking about at the time, things that meant that we were successful in it. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So when it comes to, what are the steps that someone would take? Like for me, I've been talking about doing something like this for a while. What would it take for me to pull this off? What is step one for coming up with this? How do I go about getting buy-in and communicating it and things like that? Do you just rip the Band-Aid off and say, hey, on this date we're doing it, or we start next week, or how does that work?
I think the process that Uplevel did was really helpful, and we wanted to document it so that we could make sure to help other companies implement something similar. And no process works for every company, right? We're all individuals doing different things. However, I do definitely recommend, if a company is thinking about doing it, really talking about it ahead of time and making sure that individual teams can talk about what that success looks like for them, what like success doesn't look like, how or why they would stop wanting to do the 4-day work week versus the 5. And then making sure that while, if you decide to try it, like, here's the date, let's talk about what that looks like. And then if you decide to try the 4-day work week, making sure to have those temperature checks, just like, a Survey Monkey or something along those lines, where you're just asking, how is this feeling? Like, are you feeling you're getting work done? That'll really help just to get everyone's input on if they're feeling successful in the new scenario, and then also troubleshoot any problems that come up, like while it's happening, and not waiting for something to be so broken in the process that you need to rethink how the week is going.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. So I think it sounds awesome, and I'm super excited to maybe try this one day if I can get the courage up to do it. But tell me, how can people, like, if somebody was really interested in this, they want to learn more about this, and maybe they're interested in Uplevel and they want to learn more about the things that you guys do there, how can they connect with you and learn more about this and the other things that you guys have been working on?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the best way is just our website, uplevelteam.com. We have a blog there where we're constantly posting things around engineering and development and things like that. We have our 4-day work week ebook up on there as well. And then we have presence on social media as well, with Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn, of course.
Awesome. And I'll link that up in the show notes at geekleader.com. Nicole, thanks for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. And I feel like I've learned a lot, and I'm excited to try something like this.
Yeah, thank you so much.
If you enjoyed that episode, please leave a rating and review in Apple Podcasts. I'd greatly appreciate that. And also, don't forget to check out merch. We have some t-shirts that I've designed that are on at geekleader.com. You can click on the merchandise section there and check that out. And also, don't forget about the books from our guests. So if you like this guest and other guests that have written books, please go ahead and check that out at geekleader.com. I would greatly appreciate it, and I'm sure they would too.